Hello. Today we're going to be talking about sex-linked, also known as X-linked traits. And this has to do with the X chromosome. So when we look at chromosomes, we have what are known as autosomes, and those are chromosomes 1 through 22 in humans. And they tend to be all the same size, and well, not all the same size, but like both chromosome 1s are the same size, both chromosome 2s are the same size, both chromosome 3s are the same size. Remember, we have one from mom and one from dad, so we can call it chromosome 1M and 1P for maternal and paternal. Chromosome 2M and 2P from, again, maternal and paternal. And so they contain the same information in terms of the same genes, just not necessarily the same alleles. So if chromosome 1 were to code for like hair color, let's say, both chromosome 1s would have hair color. It's just one might tell you to have red hair, one might tell you to have black hair, and you're going to have black hair because black is dominant over red hair color. And again, this is kind of an oversimplification of it, but that's generally what's going on there. And then chromosome 1 is the longest, and chromosome 22 is our shortest chromosome. So what's the deal with chromosome 23? Well, it does contain the X and the Y chromosomes. These are called the sex chromosomes. And notice that the X chromosome is much longer than the Y chromosome. The Y chromosome, if I'm not mistaken, is just a little bit longer than the chromosome 22. So 22 is the shortest, if I'm not mistaken there. But notice the X chromosome has quite a bit of information here. Like there's some different disorders that you can pinpoint here on this X chromosome. And notice the Y chromosome doesn't have much information. Basically, this XY gonadal dysgenesis is the only disorder that's listed there. There are some other ones. Basically, it carries a gene called TDF, which is testosterone determining factor. And what that does is it produces certain amounts of testosterone at a certain point in development, and this is basically what tells us to develop male genitals versus female genitals. And so if you have the Y chromosome, you have TDF, and you basically are born with male genitals, versus if you don't have that, then you have two X chromosomes. And the X chromosomes, if you have two of them, you're female, and it acts just like any other chromosome. You have, one can be dominant and one can be recessive. But notice that the Y chromosome really doesn't contain any information other than just basically makes you a male at a certain point in development. So the Y chromosome, for all intents and purposes, is pretty much useless. It doesn't contain very much information. Again, over exaggerating here, but mostly just to get the point across to you. So Y chromosomes are going to, for all intents and purposes, act recessive. So when we do these Punnett squares, we're basically going to start off with determining the gender. And we're no longer going to be looking at the alleles, but actually at the chromosomes. So the letters X and Y are going to represent chromosomes rather than alleles on the chromosomes. A side note real quick, because I know somebody is asking this, because every time I have taught this specific lecture, I get the question about hermaphroditism. So hermaphrodites are a thing that happen in a lot of organisms, even in animals. Like, for example, snails are hermaphrodites. And that means basically you have both male and female genitals. In humans, it's not something that commonly occurs. There are a couple of ways that this can happen. One that's kind of pertinent and related to what we're talking about here is if we have this TDF, and let's just say it's this little segment right here. So when we go through meiosis, we have crossing over that can occur. And that's when two similar chromosomes line up. So if you're 1M and 1P, meaning the two chromosome 1s that you have from your parents, we have crossing over, and we talked about that previously. So crossing over occurs, and we swap genetic information between two chromosome 1s, or two chromosome 2s line up, and then they swap genetic information. Well, the X and the Y do not line up because they are significantly different. They don't contain the same information. Except for sometimes there's an accident and they do line up in meiosis. So they're not supposed to line up in meiosis, but they can. And so what will happen is if this is the TDF and it gets transported and now we have an X chromosome with TDF, you could end up with two X chromosomes with the testosterone determining factor, or TDF, segment or allele. And so you would be born a female genetically, but you would be morphologically a male. And depending on how this all works out, it could end up with hermaphroditism, where you do have both male and female genitalia. There are some issues with this that are medical, and they treat it. It's not within the scope of this class, but basically to answer some of the questions that usually arise, that's one of the ways that we have human hermaphroditism. All right, so moving on, we are going to set up our Punnett squares, and this is our basic Punnett square. All right, so we're going to have the males on top, and we're going to have an X and a Y because that represents a male. And he can only pass on the X chromosome or the Y chromosome. He cannot pass on both the X and the Y chromosome to his children. The females are going to have two X's. And so we take an X from the male, an X from the female, and we end up with a female. If we have an X from the female and a Y from the male, then we end up with a male, a boy. And so notice that 50% of the offspring will be female and 50% will be male. Now, you may hear at some point in time this wives' tale that it's more likely to have males because the Y chromosome is smaller and therefore the sperm travels faster. The research on that is basically inconclusive. No, for all intents and purposes, don't ever believe that. Okay, so moving on. All Punnett squares that you guys do for this should have a start like this. They should look just like this Punnett square as they're at their base level. If you don't have this on there, then something is not right. Now, not all animals have sex chromosomes like this. Like, for example, most reptiles, particularly like sea turtles, just turtles in general, let's just say, they actually have, their gender is determined by the temperature at which the eggs incubate. So if they're really warm, I think you end up with all males. If they're really, if the nest is in the shade, then you end up with all females. And if it's in the shade part of the day and in the light part of the day, and if you have an in-between average temperature, then you end up with male and female turtles. So, gender isn't always X and Y chromosomes. The X and Y chromosome has evolved a few times in the history of life. For example, fruit flies have an X and Y chromosome. Another side note is that birds, actually, it's the opposite. So the male determines the gender. If we go back to our Punnett square, notice that the male has to pass on an X or a Y, and a female cannot. She has no choice but to pass on an X, right? So two X's make a female, and an X and a Y make a male. The male determines the gender based on which is passed on the sperm or the egg. I'm sorry, not the sperm or the egg. Based on whether he passes on an X sperm or a Y sperm. All right. The female's egg always has to have an X. So males determine gender in humans and mammals in general. Don't look up platypus reproduction because their sex chromosomes are just outrageously confusing. But like with birds, it's actually opposite. Females determine a gender, and they have a Z and a W chromosome is what they use. So it's a side note, nothing that you really need to know for this class, but just kind of some interesting trivia. Although the whole thing about reptiles having their gender determined by the temperature at which the eggs incubate, that is kind of important for later in the course. So sex-linked traits that are recessive work similar to autosomal traits. The difference is the Y chromosome is treated as a recessive trait because it contains basically no genetic information. Again, there's a little bit there, but not much. So an example, and one of the early ways that we figured this out was by breeding fruit flies. This trait appeared, and a normal, everyday, average fruit fly has red eyes. But they found that some fruit flies have white eyes, and that these white eyes, they found that almost exclusively they were found in males. Occasionally you found a female that had them, but pretty much so it was just males that had them. And this kind of had geneticists kind of baffled until they started looking at the X and the Y chromosome. And so if you cross a red-eyed this is a female with a white-eyed male. Basically, you have all red eyes, which it kind of goes along with what Mendel was saying. So how are we going to do this? So remember what I said. You're going to start off all Punnett squares with an X and a Y and an X and an X. Some mistakes that I see. All right, let me just go ahead and erase everything. All right, so some mistakes I see is I see this cross quite frequently, where people have this for the base of their Punnett square. All right, so here we have XX. What gender is that? Female, no problem. Here we have XY. What gender is that? Again, male, no problem. Here we have XY. What gender is that? Male, again, no problem. But here we have YY. You can't have that. It doesn't work. I mean, yes, you have two males here producing offspring, and that doesn't work. In terms of just, sperm can't fertilize sperm, okay? But that being said, you need a sperm and an egg, and you can't have a YY offspring. When we're looking at these sex-linked traits, we have to have a male and a female for these particular Punnett squares. So here I have two sets of females. Now obviously everything is going to be X. That's another mistake that I see. Again, for the purposes of these problems, we are going to start with an X and a Y on the top, and on the side, two X's. And I suggest that you start it off this way because concentrate on one thing at a time. So right now we're just going to figure out the gender of the offspring. And we're able to predict that it's 1 in 2, or 1/2, are going to be male, and 1/2 are going to be female. So XX's are our females, XY's are our males. Okay, now that's the base of every sex-linked Punnett square that we're going to do. Now we're going to, the previous one was a white-eyed male, and we're going to put a lowercase r on the X. Okay, and we had a red-eyed female. Let's say she's homozygous red-eyed. So again, we're going to treat this like it's capital R, and this like it's lowercase r, but there's nothing here. Why don't we put anything on the letter Y? Why don't we put a letter there? Well, if you said because the Y doesn't carry any genetic information aside from TDF, you're correct. It does not contain any information pertaining to eye color. Basically just whether you're a male or a female. That's it for the Y chromosome. So here we had capital R, because I pull and drag that one over. There we have a lowercase r, so this is this offspring. So is this a male or a female? All right, it's a female, so this is the symbol for female. It looks kind of like a little cross with a circle on it, almost like a little person. So it's a female with red eyes, right? Well, how do I know it has red eyes? Well, the next thing I'm going to look, all right, so female, capital R, lowercase r, that tells me it's red eyes. So I have a female with red eyes. All right, here, again, capital R. And here, I go down, I have a lowercase r. All right, male or female? Female. Capital R, lowercase r. Is that red eyes or white eyes? Red eyes. Red is dominant over white. So we have two of them that are like that, and you can keep track of it with tally marks if you want to. Now, females with white eyes. Well, we've already done all the males and all the females, right? I mean, look at here. Female, I'm just going to put WH for white eyes. Okay, I'm not going to write the whole thing out because I'm, cut me a break here. I'm writing with a mouse. All right, so here we have this female, red eyes, female, red eyes. That's two of them, and none of them, 0 with white eyes. So that comes out to, not 50, 100% of the females have red eyes, and 0% of the females have white eyes. Now let's look at the males here. Where did this X chromosome come from? It came from his mom. Could he have got that X chromosome from his dad? No. If he got it from his dad, he wouldn't be a boy, he would be a girl, because 2 X's make a girl, female. An X and a Y make a male, so the X chromosome was carrying this capital R. What letter do I put on the letter Y? Remember, you never put a letter on the letter Y, so don't put anything there. All right, so this is the symbol for males. It's a circle with a little arrow pointing up, like this. All right, that's the symbol for male. So that's a male, and it has red eyes. All right, so there's one of those. All right, now this one. The X chromosome is carrying a capital R, and the Y is carrying nothing. Remember, never put anything on the letter Y. So 2 red-eyed males, and how many males have white eyes? Well, 0. So again, tell me percentages in terms of the number of males and the number of females. So 100% of the males, that should be a 0. 100% of the males have red eyes and 0% have white eyes. Okay, so 100% females, red eyes. 0% females, white eyes. 100% of the males have red eyes. 0% have white eyes. Now, another thing I could ask you is how many females are carriers? Well, this female is a carrier for white eyes, and this female is a carrier for white eyes. A carrier means she shows the dominant trait, but carries the recessive trait. Right here is the carrying for the recessive trait. Okay? So let's go ahead and I'm just going to erase all of this. All right. So let's say another trait that we see in humans that is carried by that's X-linked is color blindness. So can a boy inherit his color blindness from his dad? So here we have a colorblind father, and we're going to say normal vision is dominant. So we're going to use capital N for normal vision. And the mother, and I said the father was colorblind, so I messed that up. So we're going to use lowercase n to represent, not laser pointer, there we go. We're going to use lowercase n to represent colorblind. So here's a colorblind father, and here is a normal visioned mom. So what do I put here? Is this a male or a female? Female. Capital N, lowercase n. Normal or colorblind? Colorblind. So we have a female and she has normal vision. Not colorblind. She's normal. Why is she normal? Well, she's normal because she has capital N, lowercase n. Colorblind is recessive, so there we go. All right, here we have a female. X tells me it's female. Figure out the gender first. Next, the N's. Capital N on one, lowercase n on the other. That is a normal female. All right. Male or female? It's a male. Capital N comes over. Again, we don't put any letters on the letter Y. So this is a male, and he has normal vision, not colorblind. Colorblindness, by the way, It's just you're missing one of the proteins that is produced in one of the types of cone cells, and so therefore there's like blue-green color blindness. You can't distinguish between the colors blue and green. They can see colors, just not all colors, and they can't see it as well. So again, this is a male. Don't ever put anything on the letter Y, and he has normal vision. So 100% of the females have normal vision. 0% of the females, I'm not writing it out because I'm writing with this stupid mouse pen thing. 0% of the females are colorblind, and 0% of the males are colorblind. All the males are normal. So where would a male get a color blindness from? And where did this X chromosome come from? Well, it came from mom. Why couldn't it come from dad? Because dad would then be his mom, which doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, he's got to get a Y chromosome. Boys have to get Y chromosomes from their dad, so they can't get anything from mom. But what if we just change something here? Let's just change this up, and let's say, well, what if mom was a carrier? What if mom was capital N and lowercase n? She's X capital N, X lowercase n. Now, look at this. We have a female that's colorblind, and 50% of the males would be colorblind. So this male, all right, so male or female, female, she's normal. Although she is a carrier, she is normal. Male or female, this is a male. He's got normal vision, so it's a normal male. Male or female, female, colorblind. Male or female, male. Now look here, lowercase n, colorblind. So where did this boy get his colorblindness from? The X chromosome, and the X chromosome came from mom because the Y chromosome had to come from dad. Okay, so that's kind of the ins and outs of it. But I gotta throw one more curveball at you here. There are a couple of different ways to write these, and so let's just say for a minute that all right, so let's say we have a female that's a carrier for color blindness. Hemophilia is another one they do with this a lot, where they'll use capital H's and lowercase h's, and that doesn't bother me so much. But let's just say, with the pen here, okay, so let's just say before I had a female that was a carrier, I would have written it like this, capital N, lowercase n. Well, this is a normal X chromosome, and so sometimes what they say is, well, I don't really need to put that there, because, I mean, we know that she's normal, so that's a normal X. So then what they'll do is they'll just say, all right, an X that has the letter C on it, and they don't have to necessarily write it on the top. Sometimes I'll put it on the bottom. So this would be a normal female that's a carrier for color blindness. See, this would be a normal male. They don't even put anything on the X chromosome. And it's just kind of a shorthand way of doing this. So normal X, XX, both of them are normal. This is a normal female. Normal X, normal Y, to normal male. Normal X from dad and colorblind X from mom. This is a female. She's normal, because remember, normal is dominant over colorblind, but she is a carrier for the colorblindness. There's a Y from dad and an X with the colorblindness trait from mom, so this is a male that's colorblind. Remember, determine the gender first, then determine the trait. So again, this is just a shorter way of writing it, and you can and will see this on tests, whether it is the ACT, whether it is the SAT, or whether it is your end of course exam. You can go ahead and you will see these different types of traits or different ways of writing these in different places. For today's homework, I'm going to have you guys use capital N and lowercase n, and I'm going to put everything on the top. But when we get to the pedigrees, which I'm just going to save that for the next school day, you will see it will be written more like in this format. And which way is it going to be on the test? I don't know. Which way is it going to be on the Edulastic? Again, I don't know. So you have to be familiar with both ways that we do these particular traits. It's not really necessarily standardized. Remember, These just represent the different sperm combinations. These represent the different egg combinations. This sperm, this egg, normal X, normal female, because it's two X's. So can a man pass color blindness on to his daughter? Well, if mom is completely normal, so let's erase that, and now mom is just a normal, not a carrier, just normal. Can a man pass color blindness on to his daughter? So here's a colorblind man, right? Notice that there we have a female that's normal, but is a carrier for color blindness. The only way we can end up with a female that actually has color blindness is if the mother is at least a carrier and the father is colorblind. All right. So again, another thing you can see is hemophilia. Again, we can do the same thing. Let's just say I didn't want to erase it all. So again, we're just going to use normal X's, and an H, a lowercase h, will represent that they're a hemophiliac. So look, she's a carrier for hemophilia. He has hemophilia. Male or female? Female. Lowercase h. Normal or hemophilia? Normal, because this is a normal X, and that's dominant over the recessive hemophilia trait. Here, male or female? It's a male. Normal male. Male or female? Female, we have two X's. Two lowercase h's, which means that this woman is a hemophiliac. All right, male or female? Male. Has the hemophiliac trait. Only needs one copy of it for males, so the male would be a hemophiliac. All right. One thing of note, they can do some interesting things with Y chromosomes. You can trace inheritance through the Y chromosome. Several years back, some people were making some claims that they were descended from Thomas Jefferson. And basically, the issue was that Thomas Jefferson was Caucasian or white, and the people who were claiming this were of African American descent. And so the people who were known descendants of Thomas Jefferson kind of had a fit about it and said, no way, that's not possible. You're just trying to throw Thomas Jefferson's name and drag it through the mud or whatever. So they tested some Y chromosomes of the family and of the people who were making the claims. Because if you follow the male lineage down, the Y chromosome gets passed on. And the whole issue with why is this dragging Thomas Jefferson's name through the mud is because it was speculated, one might even say known. Basically, he had affairs with slaves and such, and had produced illegitimate children. And so, again, these African American families were claiming to be having been descended from Thomas Jefferson. So, well, one way to prove this is if you go down through the males through the years and you have a straight line of males, the same Y chromosome was passed down from Thomas Jefferson to each family member that was a male. And the same thing in the Jefferson family, and the same thing in the proposed family who said that, hey, we're descended from Thomas Jefferson. So they tested both of the Y chromosomes, and it turns out they matched. They did indeed match. Now, this doesn't prove it beyond a doubt, but it's very, very strong evidence, and it's pretty much well accepted at this point. I don't know if there's been an update, if they did more genetic testing or not, but that is a quicker test just to test just the Y chromosome, and they matched identically. So the odds of it not, being true is essentially slim to none. All right. So that seems like everything. I'm kind of worried that I'm forgetting something, but Again, don't be afraid to get in contact with me if you have any questions about this. This is possibly some of the newer material. It's a little bit more difficult. My best suggestion for you, though, is to always start with this XY at the top and the two X's on the side, and then determine gender. So two X's, female, and then determine whether they have the trait or not. And remember, these are going to be recessive traits. Okay? Thank you, and have a great day.